I'm Giulia Scaffino, and this is a joint work with Lukas Aumayr, Zeta Avarikioti, and Matteo Maffei. Glimpse is the first trustless bridge for proof-of-work blockchains, which requires to relay and store on the destination blockchain only a constant amount of data coming from the source blockchain. The effective but simple design of Glimpse makes it compatible not only with quasi-Turing complete blockchains, but also with first-generation blockchains which feature unlimited scripting capabilities. Of course, we've studied also Glimpse security, both in the UC framework as well as in the rational model. And I will show you how to use our protocol to encode some cool and real-world DeFi applications such as cross-chain lending. Our work stems from the need of trustless cross-chain communication. You're all aware there are plenty of different blockchains out there, each one with its own characteristics, but they all work in isolation. So one chain is not aware of transactions being included on a different chain. We want to enable users and developers to migrate their funds from one chain to another in a trustless manner, so without relying on trusted central parties. This is not an easy task. Indeed, the trustless cross-chain communication divides into two main challenges. The first one is transaction verification. Imagine some data are transferred from Bitcoin to Ethereum, then Ethereum has to be able to internally verify those data are actually coming from Bitcoin and they've not been faked up. The second challenge is transaction synchronization. Imagine there's a particular transaction in Bitcoin, particular transaction in Ethereum. We want that either both of them are included in their respective chains or none of them has to be. With this in mind, I can now give you an overview of our protocol. Glimpse is a contract living on the destination blockchain, which is set up by two parties, a prover and a verifier. The contract encodes the following logic. If a particular transaction is included in Bitcoin, then publish a transaction X in Ethereum if and only if a proof successfully verifies. Otherwise, after some time t, publish a different transaction in Ethereum, transaction Y. Now imagine the prover comes along, publishes a transaction, this particular transaction in Bitcoin, which is included, for instance, in the blue block. And now the question is, how can she prove to the Glimpse contract on a different chain that this transaction was actually included in Bitcoin? She can construct a proof which comprises the Merkle proof of inclusion of the particular transaction within the Merkle tree, whose Merkle root is included in the block header of the blue block, as well as the blue block header and a bunch of subsequent block headers which are displayed in orange. Is this So let me stress that the number of subsequent block headers in the proof has to be carefully chosen depending on t, which is the time that parameterizes the contract, and also has to meet some other important conditions. Is the proof secure? Are we happy now? Not quite, because by fully knowing the transaction up front, the prover could forge a fake proof beforehand. So for instance, imagine the prover 1 month before setting up the contract with the verifier could start mining a proof, and only when she has a valid proof that is able to fool the contract, she starts setting up the contract with the verifier. How can we prevent this upfront mining attack? We simply require the verifier to randomize the transaction in question. For instance, during the setup phase of our protocol, the verifier samples a random string, gives it to the prover, and the prover has to mandatorily include it within the transaction that is verified by our contract. Let's zoom in and let's see what the contract actually does. It checks that the random string is indeed included within the transaction to be verified. It checks that the Merkle proof hashes to the Merkle root in the blue block header, checks that all block headers in the proof are properly chained together, and finally checks that all hashes of block headers are smaller than the proof of work difficulty of the source chain. If all these checks pass, then transaction X is included in Ethereum. Otherwise, after some time, transaction Y is included in Ethereum. We've studied the economic security of our protocol, and we have defined the secure parameter space for Glimpse when it comes to proof forgery attacks and censorship attacks. The analysis is quite complicated. You can check it out online in our paper, but I want to give you one key takeaway. For Glimpse to be secure, or in general for almost any bridge in blockchains to be secure, it has to be more profitable for users or attackers to behave honestly rather than attacking the bridge. This usually comes in contract or bridges having to hold an amount of money which is below a certain threshold. Now let me guide you through the cross-chain lending by using Glimpse. Before diving into the details, let me spend a few words on how lending protocols work. The prover gives the verifier some collateral in Ethereum, for instance. Then, upon receiving the collateral from the prover, the verifier grants the loan to the prover in Bitcoin. So this is a collateralized lending protocol. Then, when the prover is ready to give back the loan to the verifier in Bitcoin, the verifier has to give back the collateral to the prover in Ethereum. When designing cross-chain lending protocols, there are two main challenges. The first one is that at the very beginning, when the prover gives the collateral to the verifier, the prover already has to have some guarantees that she can get back the collateral when she repays the loan. The second challenge is that the transaction that pays back the loan is not fully known at the very beginning. This is why the prover has to be able, of course, to spend the money she borrowed, and she can perform an arbitrary number of transactions. This means we do not know at the very beginning which input the payback transaction spends from. With this in mind, let's see how our protocol Glimpse helps us in cross-chain lending protocols. So the prover comes along, locks some collateral in the Glimpse contract. This contract is conditioned to the randomized payback transaction, but now there's a placeholder in place for the input. Then the prover that locks collateral in the contract and the verifier that gives the loan to the prover has to happen atomically, for instance, with an atomic swap. And then when the prover is ready to pay back the loan to the verifier in Bitcoin, she can simply provide the contract with a proof of inclusion of the payback transaction in Bitcoin. And if the proof verifies, then she can get back the collateral. If she doesn't submit any proof, then the collateral is retained by the verifier. Let me now spend a few words on where Glimpse stands with respect to state-of-the-art approaches or solutions when it comes to transaction verification. Glimpse improve on the data which are relayed and stored from the source to the destination blockchain. It indeed requires a constant amount of data, whereas current solutions in literature at best achieve the logarithmic amount. Glimpse is also backward compatible with the proof-of-work blockchains. And now let's have a look at current solutions when it comes to transaction synchronization. Glimpse is able to encode not only atomic swaps, as it happens for atomic swap themselves, but also a number of different applications, for instance, the cross-chain lending I've just presented you. Furthermore, Glimpse can also be deployed not only on second-generation blockchains, for instance, Ethereum, Cardano, Algorand, so those chains that have quasi-Turing complete scripting capabilities, but can also be deployed on first-generation blockchains, for instance, Liquid, which is the most prominent layer 2 solution of Bitcoin, and could be deployed on Bitcoin itself if only 2 opcodes were enabled. These opcodes are, however, under discussion in the community, and we hope that our work gives additional reasons to enable these opcodes again. I've reached the end of my presentation. Thank you all for your attention. You can look up the paper online, and I'm now happy to take any question. Thanks.